Shri Dev Shivakumar, Mr. Jagat Shah, Chairman, and Mr. Naishat Parikh, Managing Director, Inductotham USA, members of Inductotham family, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and it is my privilege to extend a hearty welcome to all of you this evening for first Henry Rowan Memorial Lecture. Today, though this memorial lecture, we remember and pay our respect and tribute to Mr. Henry Rowan, a technocrat with his conviction, hard work, and also honest dedication, built an industrial company of repute, Inductotham, a globally well-known name. He won the hearts of several people, both employees and customers. An idealist and perfectionist, Rowan pushed himself and his team to develop groundbreaking new technologies under intense deadline of customers, often taking huge risks to get order and satisfy the customer. Inductotham superior engineering led to advances that stunned the industry and also enabled to outdo companies which were competing many times. And despite constant competitive pressures that threatened Inductotham dominance and personal tragedies that tested him in many ways, he could never have imagined Mr. Rowan succeeded in building a globally well known conglomerate that dominates the industry today. To deliver this first memorial lecture on, on a topic which is very dear to heart of late Henry Rowan, pursuing excellence. And nonetheless, we have with us one of the very eminent and prestigious professional, Mr. Dev Shivakumar, Group Executive President, Corporate Strategy and Business Development, Aditya Birla Group, who was also President of All India Management Association and great supporter of Ahmedabad Management Association. Shiv Kumar, who had an illustrious professional career, hold top corporate positions in Aditya Birla Group at present, but also served with lot of excellence and success in very leading organizations like Hindustan Unilever, Philips, Nokia, and PepsiCo. At Nokia, he was instrumental in pursuing low-cost mobile telephony devices across rural India and which created Nokia as a dominant brand in India. He is recently chairman of the Mobile Marketing Association and also chairman of the Advertising Standard Council of India. He has been on the board of XLRI and IIM Udaipur. Mr. Shiv Kumar has been awarded Distinguished Alumnus Recognition by IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta. He is also having a literary flair of very high level of excellence, and he has been involved in leading senior, you know, leading magazines, and he has published a lot of papers in outstanding and leading magazines. Also, his recent book on right choice is one of the best sellers and very useful guide for the present day managers. With this brief note, we dedicate this memorial lecture in the memory of a great industrialist, Mr. Henry Rowan. The lecture by Shiv is going to be about 30 to 40 minutes, followed by question and answers. Over to you, Shiv. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my friend. Yatin, that's always a pleasure to interact with you. And I've learned a lot from you in my last industry, and thank you for all the teaching. I don't see my other friend Rajiv here, but wish him well for me. And I'm sure that I'll catch up with you guys when I'm in Ahmedabad next. Mr. Nair is going to run my slides for me. So I'm very excited to be speaking on this topic of pursuing excellence. Is it fact or is it fiction? This is the first Dr. Henry Rowan Memorial Lecture, and thank you, Dr. Therm, for instituting this at the Ahmedabad Management Association. And I'm sure through years we will see this build up. It's my absolute humble privilege to kick it off as the first speaker in what I personally believe will be a fascinating series in years to come. I have a lot of great respect for the Ahmedabad Management Association. I have sat in on the All India Management Association. I've seen the dedicated work which Mr. Nair does and all the presidents who have actually built it. Ahmedabad always comes as one of the top three, local management associations in this country. So kudos to all of you and all the best. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So this is the book that Yatinda talked about. This is my book, The Right Choice, which was released online on Jan 15th, and in bookstores it's available from Feb 15th. Please do pick it up. It's available online. The Kindle version is available. You can also get the physical copy. It's a hardbound. And please do order it or do get it for your corporation or company, and I'm sure that you'll benefit from it. I've spoken of the 10 career dilemmas people face as they go from being a junior manager to the managing director of a company. Dilemmas like, is money the most important variable? Should I do a second degree or an MBA? Is living apart worth it? Should I join a board? Which industries do I move to? And things like that. Next slide, please. So in this session over the next maximum 30 minutes, I'm going to give you some thoughts about excellence. Excellence both at an individual level and at a company level. No company can be excellent if its individuals do not want to pursue excellence. That is just not possible. So you can look at tennis, you can look at cricket, you can look at football. You look at football, you have some great, excellent players, but the team does no good. That's basically because the team itself is not driven by excellence and does not want to shine. So that's the point I want to leave with you. So you need excellence. If a company wants to be excellent, then individuals in that company have to be excellent. Otherwise, life doesn't work. Next slide, please. Everybody wants to be excellent. So if you talk to anybody in corporate India or sports or any institution, everybody says we want to be excellent. Nobody says we want to be average. Nobody says we want to be an underperformer. So everybody wants to be excellent. So what does it mean? Next chart, please. Excellence means always doing your best. Day in and day out, at any time of the day, if somebody wakes you up, you do your very best. So excellence is about meeting a very good standard day in and day out. That's what excellence means. Next chart, please. Excellence also means you're better than the norm. So if you're an excellent company in an industry, you should be doing better than most other people in the industry. You should be beating the average of that industry by a long mile. If you're an excellent student in college, then you should be doing better than all the other people. If you're an excellent manager at work, then you should be doing much better at work compared to everybody else at work. So excellence is, as I've told you, is about being very, very good. It's always doing your best, but it also means that you're doing better than everybody else, whatever that norm is. So whether it's a country, whether it's an institution, whether it's a company, or whether it's an individual, I think this is how you think about it, that excellence means doing your very best, and excellence means you're better than the norm, whatever norm has been set by that industry or by that association. So does excellence start when you're a kid? Let's look at that slide. Next slide, please. Here are three child prodigies who excelled in whatever they did. Tiger Woods, he just had an unfortunate accident 2 weeks ago. But Tiger was playing from the age of 3. He was an outstanding golfer when he was 3. His father took him to golf courses. And as a child prodigy, he went on to being one of the finest golf players in the world and certainly the most celebrated golf player. Mozart, as a kid, he used to compose and he went on to become one of the best composers in the world. Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, Sachin Tendulkar is absolutely legendary, having got into a partnership with Vinod Kambli for 600 runs for Shadrashram. And, nobody had even heard of that. People are happy if they get 60 runs partnership. And here's somebody who's got 600 runs partnership. The world looked up to him. And all 3 of them were child prodigies, and all 3 of them achieved a lot and made a huge success of whatever they started with. It's not that every child prodigy becomes, somebody like a Tiger Woods or a Mozart or Tendulkar. That's not true at all. Okay, there are many child prodigies who just fall off somewhere on the way. There are many guys who show a lot of promise when they are kids, but then they just wither away. So what are the lessons from these child prodigies, okay, of individual excellence? Next chart, please. Number 1 for individual excellence, you have to attain a level of superiority in any skill. It has to be a learned one. You're just not born with it. It doesn't work. You could be born with it, but you need to learn it again and again. Next, you acquire a large knowledge base and sweat to learn even the smallest details. That's when you'll be excellent. And third, you need a high level of commitment to improve continuously. And many people have talked of continuous improvement, etc. But this is absolutely important. You need a high level of commitment to continuous improvement. So a high level of superiority in any skill is a learned approach. A large knowledge base, you have to sweat on the details, and a high degree of commitment to continuous improvement. Next slide, please. So Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000 hour rule. He said, if you want to be good at something, you need to practice it for 10,000 hours. You need to study about it for 10,000 hours, etc., etc. He quotes the Beatles. He says that most people are very happy if they go on 100, live gigs across the world, any band. And then he says the Beatles, they had already played 12,000 times live in Hamburg and Liverpool before they set shore in America. And that's why they were so good. They were so innovative. But the concept of this 10,000 rule is not a Malcolm Gladwell copyright. It was actually done by somebody else. Next slide, please. This was K. Anders Ericsson. Anders Ericsson studied the best violinists. He studied the best violinists and said, what makes them outstanding violinists? Why are they excellent at being great violinists? He studied them for a long time, and then he came with actually 2 simple answers as to why the greatest violinists were excellent at their craft. Next slide, please. The greatest violinists, the premier violinists, the 2 simple lessons we learned from them as to why they were the best at their craft is they had deliberate practice. They practiced very, very systematically, very thoroughly. They assigned time for it and did it well. And next, they slept well. They slept for 8.6 hours every day, and they had peace of mind, and hence woke up fresh every morning. Doesn't sound very different for professional managers and executives. Deliberate practice is very, very crucial. It just doesn't drop into your lap. You have to find time for it. You have to slot time for it, and you have to be good at it. Next slide, please. There's another guy, Daniel F. Chambliss. He studied excellent swimmers, and then he wrote the book, The Mundanity of Excellence. Okay, so he studied a number of swimmers and said, why do some swimmers do far better than the other guys? And why do some swimmers don't do well? What's the logic? So I gave you the example of the child prodigies. I gave you Malcolm Gladwell's rule. I gave you the example of the violinists. Okay, now let's look at what we have learned of excellent swimmers or excellence in swimming. Next chart, please. So the 3 lessons from the mundanity of excellence as applied to swimmers. Number 1, the quality of practice is more important than the quantity of practice. And we've done this in many situations, but that's true. Second, talent is useless. It is not natural. There's nothing called natural talent. You have to hone it. You have to practice it in order for you to get better. And third, excellence is a compound effect of repetition leading to perfection. The more you practice, the better you get. Let me give you two examples. 10,000 hours. If you have a bad golf swing or you have a bad service in tennis, okay, practicing more of that is not going to help you, which is the point of the quality. You have to know what you want to practice in your swing and golf or your serve. And similarly, excellence is a compound effect leading to perfection. Gary Player was one of the best golfers in the world. He would practice a hell of a lot. And when he played outstanding shots on the golf course, people who would play with him would say, Gary, you're a lucky bastard. And Gary would say, the harder I practice, the luckier I get. And that's very true. If you practice very hard, if you're really focused, if your quality of practice is good, then as a manager, the best opportunities will come your way. You don't need to worry. So the lessons from swimming excellence: quality of practice is more important than quantity. Talent is useless unless, of course, you constantly hone it. And excellence is a compounded effect which leads to perfection. Next slide, please. So those were the lessons from individuals. Now let's look at lessons in terms of excellence for companies. There has been a lot of jargon around this concept of excellent companies. Okay, where did this jargon start and why did it start? That's what I'm going to cover for you over the next few slides. And then I'll summarize by talking about how you should think of excellence. What are the things that you should worry about when you get enamored by this word called excellence? Next chart, please. The concept of excellence started as a secondary research project by Tom Peters and Waterman when they were working for the McKinsey office in San Francisco. There was a main project which was about strategy or organization. And then there was a secondary project which these two guys were allowed. They were told you can fly anywhere in the world. You can fly first class. You can interview anybody you want in the world. Take your time and tell us about what you have learned about organizations. Okay. This was the mandate which was given to them at that point of time in the year 1977 or 1978. Next chart, please. So why did it happen then? If you go back now, American companies were losing to the Japanese at the end of the 1970s. And Lee Iacocca had written a famous book that the Japanese manipulated the yen, and that's why they were more competitive, because the whole competition started with the Japanese auto industry really hitting the American auto industry. The reason they were hitting the American auto industry was that Japanese companies had much better quality, much better durability, and were much better value. They were the first guys to see the small car and really make a big fetish of the small car. That's what they did. So in order to understand where America was and what was happening, that's the time when people wanted to understand this. Next chart. So Peters and Waterman took 2 years to do this project or more. And then one of their associates in their Munich office fixed a meeting for them with Siemens. They had 700 slides of this project, and they went and took the Siemens people, senior managers, through these 700 slides over a 2-day seminar. Then one of their friends fixed a meeting with PepsiCo in New York. PepsiCo told them, we don't have 2 days, we have 2 hours, put 55 slides and come and talk to us. Others don't bother to come. So Peters and Waterman condensed all that they had put down into 8 themes, and they synthesized the research for PepsiCo, and that became the book. And that's how the book started. If PepsiCo had listened to 2 days, we wouldn't have had the book. It wouldn't have hastened. Maybe they'd have taken years to write it. Peters left McKinsey, wrote this book, earned a lot of royalty. McKinsey got 50% of the royalty of the book. Waterman, because he stayed back with McKinsey, didn't get any royalty. This book has sold millions of copies, more than 4-5 million copies across the world. Okay, seen as a real marker in terms of thinking about organizations and what they do. Next slide, please. So what did In Search of Excellence say? In Search of Excellence said that all excellent companies, and they had 43 excellent companies in that list when they published this in 1982, They said all excellent companies show the following 8 characteristics. 1, a bias for action. Today we call it agility and speed. 2, staying close to the customer. Today we call that customer centricity or consumer obsession. Third, autonomy and entrepreneurship. Today we call that empowerment. Fourth, productivity through people. We call it various things today. Next, hands-on, value-driven. They said that the managers in these companies are hands-on. They don't delegate for the sake of delegation. They have a very good sense of what's happening. That's what I call microsensing. Number 6, stick to the knitting. These great companies or excellent companies know what they're good at and they continue to do that very well. That theory is not very true across most places. It's true in some places, but many people have had to pivot. Number 7, simple form lean staff. The number of levels in the company between the CEO and the front line would be very, very few. And we've seen this. Many people have experimented with 7 levels and 8 levels even today. And finally, simultaneous loose-tight properties, which means the company is focused on values, the company is focused on a way of working, but it also has the ability to allow people who are slightly deviant to also succeed in that organization. So if you look at those 8 things there, 1 or 2 might have changed in concept, but by and large, all these hold even true today. They're no different. The world is different. So the principles of excellence, I don't think change is my point of view. Next slide, please. So, In Search of Excellence argued that excellent companies, sorry for the typo, it says EFO, that excellent companies are agile, customer-centric, and stick to values. Okay, no different from companies today. That's what you would want all your companies to be: agile, customer-centric, and stick to values. That holds true even today for any company. That's what I'd argue with you. Next slide, please. So, over the last 40 years, we have had 3 big books on the concept of excellence. 3 very big blockbuster books, as we call them. The first is In Search of Excellence. It came about in 1982. The second is Built to Last by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras, and that came in 1994. It came 12 years after In Search of Excellence. And then in 2001, 7 years after Built to Last, and close to 20 years after In Search of Excellence, came the next book on excellence called Good to Great. And that was by Jim Collins. These were the 3 books on excellence. They studied a number of companies. So In Search of Excellence looked at 43 companies, which they shortlisted as excellent companies. Built to Last looked at 18 companies in their list, and Good to Great looked at 11. So they had scanned thousands of companies on various parameters and had come down to saying 43 companies in 1982, 18 companies in 1984, 11 companies in 2001 could be deemed excellent. That's what they said. Next slide, please. So these 3 books, unduplicated, studied 50 companies. I think duplicated was 60, but unduplicated was 50 companies. They studied 50 companies on this theme. Now, over a period of time, people have checked how have these companies done over a period of time. Over a period of time, after looking at it for 15 years or 20 years or 10 years. So what I'm going to present to you is data of how these companies, which were regarded excellent in 1982, in 1994, and in 2001, how do they fare by the year 2016 or 17? Next slide, please. So here are the columns. The first column is the name of the book, In Search of Excellence, Built to Last, or Good to Great. The second column is the year in which the book was written and the number of companies which are regarded as excellent by that book. So In Search of Excellence was written in 1982 and they listed 43 companies as being excellent. Built to Last was written in 1994 and it listed 18 companies as excellent. Good to Great was written in 2001 and it listed 11 companies as excellent. Next, in which year was this list evaluated again for performance of these companies? The In Search of Excellence list was evaluated in 2002, which is 20 years after that list was published. Built to Last was studied in 2014, again 20 years after that list was published. And Good to Great was in 2016, 15 years after the first list was produced. Now let's look at how these companies have performed on these, the parameters, very parameters which was used to start. So if you look at the In Search of Excellence list, only 4 companies out of that 43. Remember, some merged, some fell by the wayside, some collapsed like Kodak, etc. That's a different matter. That's why the numbers won't add up to exactly that number. Okay. In the In Search of Excellence list, only 4 companies could be regarded as stars 20 years later. And the definition of the star was 500 basis points superior performance compared to the market average. In terms of outperform, 5 companies could be classified as outperform, which was 200 basis points better than the market. If you looked at those companies which are exactly in the middle, like any other company, 8 companies were like that. Companies which underperformed, which is 200 basis points less than the market, were 4. And companies which were regarded as utter failure were 9 of them. So remember, you started with 43. 9 means 20% of the companies were already regarded as failure. Let's look at build to last. Of the 18 companies, only 2 companies could be called stars, which delivered more than 500 basis points versus the market. 6 companies could be called outperform, which delivered 200 basis points better than market. 6 companies were in the middle, 1 was underperform, and 3 were failures. So remember, 18 start, 3 failures, close to 20%. Good to great. Started with 11 companies, 2 companies were stars, more than 500 basis points versus market. 2 companies were outperform, greater than 200 basis points versus market. 4 companies were average, 0 was underperformance, and 3 companies were failures. So remember, they started with 11, now we are talking of 25% of companies going. So if you look at that list, unduplicated list of 50 people, now suddenly you find that 20 companies underperform from that list of 50, 40%. 21 overperform, 40% again, 18 were average, which basically means that if you took a coin and tossed it heads or tails, you would have been just as right. So from the list of excellence companies, from the list shortlisted, etc., there is absolutely no guarantee that these companies continue to be excellent. Okay, not one company in all the lists is common. That's what I want you to know. So next slide. What do we make of this? What we could make out of individual excellence is very simple because it was in our hands. What we needed to do, deliberate practice, 10,000 hours, quality of practice more than quantity of practice. That was very simple. Very good, shorthand for all of us. What can we take out of the lessons from excellent companies which have not turned out to be excellent or have been just hyped up? I give you 6 lessons. Next slide. The first thing is, just because you're great or excellent is not a continued guarantee of future success. You can be excellent at one point of time. It doesn't mean you'll continue to be excellent at another point of time. You have to constantly reshape yourself. You have to constantly reimagine the world based on the principles and do better and better. Once great does not mean you'll always be great. Once excellent does not mean you'll always be excellent. Remember, 40% of the excellent companies became failures. Remember that stark fact. Next slide, please. There are up periods and down periods. The same company when studied in an up period could be an excellent company. The same company studied in a down period could be a failure company. Campbell Soup is one such example. Two lists, built to last and good to great, took 2 different time frames. And in one it featured as an excellent company, one it featured as a failure company. So the time frame also matters, okay, as to when the study was done and how the companies were picked. Next slide, please. Most data is suggestive, it's not conclusive. Okay, what happens if we just tend to look at that and we tend to blindly copy it? It doesn't work. So the data of each company that you study as excellent, or a group of companies that you study as excellent, is just a suggestive database. It is not a conclusive database. Because if it were conclusive, then those companies would have continued to be successful. And in this list of people who have collapsed are outstanding names: Ford, Boeing, General Electric. You think of those names. Okay, GE nobody thought could ever go out of business, but GE is in bad shape today. Next slide, please. We tend to classify winners on simple things like market cap, EBITDA ratios, margin, etc., etc. The degree of competitiveness is just as important. For example, one of the FMCG companies in India has been losing market share, 1% market share every year for the last 20 years. We still think it's an excellent company, but it's nowhere as competitive. So just because you go by market cap, it might be seen as an excellent company, but in terms of degree of competitiveness, it will nowhere be near the degree of competitiveness it was there 20 years ago. Next slide, please. Next, you cannot be great by studying greatness and excellence. You have to do something about it. Just because you read all the books does not make you a professor. Okay, so just don't get into the fad of just reading about some company and then thinking that your company will become great or excellent. That does not exist, is my point. Next slide, please. So, excellence is a myth. It's not a fact in most companies. It's an absolute myth. And even if you're an excellent company, it's very difficult to sustain it. It's unlikely that you'll sustain it. You have less than a 10% chance, I submit, of sustaining excellence. It requires constant renovation, constant rethinking of the principles, constant managerial excellence for you to do it. There is nothing called permanent excellence in this world. That's what I would like you to take out of this. Next slide, and my last slide. So I started this with a tribute to Henry Rowan, Dr. Henry Rowan, and his wife, Betty. Thank you, Inductor Therm, for starting this wonderful memorial lecture concept with the Ahmedabad Management Association. The Ahmedabad Management Association is one of the best local management associations in the country. Mr. Nair is a doyen, runs it brilliantly. And all the ex-presidents, people like Rajiv Vastupal, people like Yatinder Sharma, have contributed immensely to making AMA what it is today. And I'm sure that the current team and the future teams will be even better. Nobody says he doesn't want to be excellent. Everybody wants to be excellent, but saying that I want to be excellent does not get you there. So I looked at excellence on two dimensions. One is individual excellence. We looked at prodigies. We looked at prodigies like Tiger. We looked at prodigies like Mozart. We looked at prodigies like Tendulkar. Then we looked at Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000-hour rule and where it came from, the violinist. And the violinist was about deliberate practice, absolutely important. And that was something which was very, very crucial. Next, we looked at the swimmers. What did the swimmers do? The quality of practice was more important than the quantity. That's what we recognized. Okay. And then we moved to organization excellence. And we asked ourselves, who has written about excellence? 3 books have been written. 1982, In Search of Excellence. 1994, okay, Built to Last. And 2001, Good to Great. We looked at those companies. I talked about Tom Peterson Waterman, how they presented 700 slides to Siemens, 55 slides to PepsiCo, and that's how the book was born. Okay. We talked about the 8 principles which are laid out in the book, which are applicable even today. And then we looked at the list after 20 years and after 15 years, and we asked ourselves, how would you classify them? In that sense, 21 companies were outperforming, 20 companies were underperforming, and the rest were average. So which means if you took a coin and tossed heads or tails, you would have had the same probability. So my summary lesson to you is that being excellent is good, sustaining it is very difficult. Just looking at an excellent company or reading about an excellent company does not make you either excellent or great. It requires a lot of hard work, and you need to be on the treadmill almost every day if you want to succeed. Okay, so that's all I had to say, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, AMA. Thank you very much, Mr.
For giving an excellent overview on pursuing
Take
excellence.
any questions that you might have of me now.
Thank you, Shiv, for giving an excellent overview on pursuing excellence, which starts from individual excellence, where you have to be at the edge to look at your skills, look at your learning abilities, and also ability to execute and do it in a manner that you are outstanding among the group. And that calls for quite a few elements in you: burning desire to excel, uh, improving quality of practice day and night, and with a mission to be excellent where you have to compete with yourself. And with that, you took pursuing excellence into corporate world, and you took up some of the celebrated books which have done excellent research on excellent companies by, you know, Tom Peters, then Jim Collins, and these books have spent quality time in analyzing all these companies and finding attributes why they succeed. But very rightly said by you that this particular pursuing excellence is a continuous process, and one has to be absolutely on go to be excellent forever. I mean, this is not something which can happen because you have done once, so it will continue. So, very good ideas and thoughts have been presented by you, and I thank you for such a brilliant presentation. I would request Radhika to read out questions, and maybe you can take
Yeah.
few questions. Thank you.
There are a bunch of questions on, is there similar data for Indian companies? It's not there. Indian authors don't tend to be so systematic and develop it, etc. It will happen, I'm sure, in a period of time. But right now, there is no such data bank or anything available on Indian companies.
So, Radhika will present questions
Thank
and
you.
you can answer them.
Sure thing. Radhika, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Yatindra sir. So one question is specifically from the perspective of Indians. Does our insecurity and fear of survival kill our pursuit for excellence in some way, sir?
Not true. I wouldn't think that. I think it's not that. Go back to what I said. Excellence is a state of mind. You want to say that I want to be better than everybody else. I am willing to commit the time and the effort to do it, and I'm going to consistently beat the norm. If you have that. For example, if I look at sports, we've had Vijay Amritraj reaching the top 3 or so in the world. You have Tendulkar, you have Virat Kohli. There are a number of places where Indians have done very well. Take Hero Motors Corporation; it's the number 1 in the world right now in two-wheelers. So there are many. TCS is a great example. Okay, so there are many companies which have done well. So I think we have enough examples. If there are no notable ones beyond this fantastic example, it's maybe because they haven't tried hard enough.
Thank you, sir. The next question goes to this is, so what one should do when the chips are down? Should we chase excellence or remain in the peace with reasonable performance?
So if you make peace with reasonable performance, or what Shumantra Ghoshal used to call satisfactory underperformance, then your company will not have a bright future, and you as an individual will not have a bright future. Imagine if you go to work for a company and you say, I will be average. If you're average, you'll get found out very quickly. Nobody wants to work with average people. People want to work with above average people. So I think that's not an option. And you should not start to think of excellence only when you are in a crisis. You should think of excellence every day. And if you're an excellent company, then I think you buffer yourself against crisis, etc. I always say that a crisis is a very good opportunity for a well-run company. Well-run companies tend to do much better in a crisis than badly run companies.
Thank you, sir. The next question is like, why does companies fail to retain excellence?
I think they lose steam after some time. They don't catch the next wave. They don't look ahead and don't look very far. For example, let's take digitization. Everybody's been talking about digitization for the last 3-4 years, but very few companies have done something about digitization. And suddenly come the pandemic and we've had a huge challenge. Companies which were digital before have done far better. And companies which are not digital, but completely physical in their outlook, like apparel businesses, etc., have completely floundered and collapsed. So you had the chance to be excellent at digital. You gave up that chance. And now when the pandemic has struck, now you're struggling.
True. So the next question is related to like how integrity can be helpful in leading to excellence.
Integrity will ensure that you don't do anything wrong. Excellence is the pursuit of being the very best. in the pursuit of being the very best, you can end up taking shortcuts. You can end up trying to hoodwink the system, or you can end up trying to do something wrong. Let me give you the example. I don't know how many of you remember a chap called Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was a Canadian runner who was the fastest man on earth, but he tested positive for doping, right? So was Ben Johnson pursuing excellence? Almost certainly yes. But was he pursuing excellence by taking the chota shortcut and being lax with governance? Almost certainly yes. So a Tendulkar has pursued excellence without taking drugs. So that's where governance comes in. That's where character comes in. That's where moral values come in.
Very rightly said, sir. Next question is related to the studies. The follow-up studies were done by whom in each of these three cases? The three books, I think, the studies which we talked.
By the writers themselves. They employed huge research teams. They gathered data from the stock market. In each of these studies, they looked at least 1,000 companies, looked at maybe 20, 30 more measures. They classified the companies, trying to look at what was similar to them, what was not dissimilar to them, etc. So very thorough research. This is not ordinary. It's not just sitting at a table and writing a thesis. No.
So the next question is that if a company is losing its ground because in customers market due to the low price competition, in spite of having superior quality product, what that company should do?
Yeah, so I think the only way when you are a superior product, superior price is to innovate. There is no other answer. Only when you innovate. For example, I was just talking to Yatinder when we started about the Plasmax bottling system. Okay, if you look at the beverages market, between Coke and Pepsi, I think they have about 40-50 share, okay, or less right now. It's the regional players who have a lot of share. So what has Coke done? They've introduced the Plasmax bottle, which ensures higher fizziness and much fresher product. That's what they do. Okay, that's an innovation which adds value to the basic product. Now the people who are competing against them on price are not able to offer that. So you have to look at what are the points of differentiation and how do you actually add value.
Sir, do you believe in level 5 leadership?
Yes, absolutely. Level 5 leadership is the leadership which is called servant leadership. Level 5 leadership is associated with people who always do what is right for the company, who are always very humble, who give their team the credit first, and who are by and large in the background. They know what is to be done and they energize their teams to do it. That is what is called a level 5 leadership.
A very tricky question, that which employees drive the excellence? Corrupt and efficient, or mediocre and honest?
And I don't think you can classify like that. That's like saying which politician is efficient. Is he a corrupt politician who's efficient, or a non-corrupt politician who's efficient? I don't think you can draw conclusions like that. That is wrong. And I would not urge you to do that. Again, go back to what I started, the first 3 slides. Excellence is a state of mind. I want to be the very best. I do not want to be average. I want to be better than the norm. I want to be better than average. That's where it starts. Corruption or non-corruption does not come into that.
So we'll take the last question of the evening, sir. Due to paucity of time, participants, we'll take the last question now. That is, companies are as good as their employees are. So do you see enough focus at the leadership level to drive human values and culture to the lower level? There seems to be a lot of frustration and burnout today. Yeah, sir.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. You're absolutely right. If you want excellence, you can have good people, but more important, leaders have to provide an enabling culture, a culture which supports each other, a culture which is not a blame culture, a culture which is not political but apolitical, and a culture where there is meritocracy and there's clarity about why somebody is promoted or somebody gets rewards. I think that's the culture which brings out excellence in people. And you are absolutely right. Many leaders do not invest time and effort in creating, a good culture. And that's why I always say, always join a company with a good culture, because that will be a multiplier value on your CV in days to come.
Yeah, thank you, Shiv, for being outstanding always. And it has been a brilliant presentation of some of the very good thoughts, good learning, and also we can definitely take some pride into this presentation, the way in which you have assessed individual excellence, you have gone into corporate excellence, gone into various benchmarks. You have already given your assessment that this is not a sure shot guarantee for being successful all the time, because you have to be excellent all the time. And if we look at ideas and thoughts, whatever you talked about on an individual level, also on corporate level, I think these are great takeaways. And I'm pretty sure that all participants will definitely learn and try to practice all these ideas, whatever you have presented this evening. They are very useful and great learning. And as rightly said by Somerset Mom, I mean, very, very good thought, which signifies excellence even at the most menial job. That if you want to be a street sweeper, sweep the street so well that the heavens will come and have a look and say, cannot be done better than this. And that is excellence. Thank you, Shiv. With this note, wish you all a very good evening and look forward to see you again. Thank you again.
Thank
Thank you, sir. With your permission, I end the meeting. Thank you, all the participants. Have a good day.